Let's get into the book of 2 Kings. And 2 Kings, we are going to be starting chapter 10 this morning. We're right here looking at this bigger section of Jehu's reign that goes back to chapter 9, which we were able to finish up actually on Wednesday evening, where we saw that Jehu had been anointed king, and then he goes and Jehu goes to Joram outside of Jezreel, and he kills Joram. And then at the same time, Ahaziah of Judah was there, and so he ends up actually killing Ahaziah as well. And then they go on to Jezreel, and they go on to kind of the palace area there, and Jezebel ends up being killed. And so we looked in some of these things and considered how it is that there are elements in this that Jehu was doing correctly, but there are also some elements where Jehu was beginning to overstep. What was it, or rather, who was it that Jehu was specifically supposed to be bringing this judgment of execution upon? On Ahab's family. Well, where do we start to see some of that overstepping? Ahaziah. Right? Ahaziah had connection to Ahab's family, but Ahaziah himself was not of that bloodline. And so we see how it is, and one could make the case, well, that was an okay thing to do. And matter of fact, in the book of 2 Chronicles, we're told that that was God's occasion for Ahaziah's downfall. And so whether it was Jehu or someone else, it was going to happen. But as far as Jehu specifically, we can see in that he's already beginning to overstep what it was that he was supposed to have done. But there was still more of the family of Ahab that Jehu needed to take care of, and that's what we'll get into starting at the top of chapter 10. And so as we get into chapter 10, the bulk of this chapter I've just called cleaning up, because it's really just more of the same of what we had at the end of chapter 9, but we don't always get quite as much detail in it. But let's look and see where it is that Jehu is cleaning up, starting now in chapter 10 with Ahab's sons. And so let's have somebody read, if you would. Just go ahead and read 2 Kings chapter 10, verses 1 through 5.
Now Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. And Jehu wrote and sent letters to Samaria, to the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, and to those who reared Ahab's sons, saying, Now as soon as this letter comes to you, since your master's sons are with you, and you have chariots and horses, a fortified city also, and weapons, choose the best qualified of your master's sons, set him on his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. But they were exceeding afraid, and said, Look, 2 kings could not stand up to him. How then can we stand? And he who was in charge of the house, and he who was in charge of the city, the elders also, and those who reared the sons, sent to Jehu, saying, We are your servants. We will do all you tell us, but we will not make anyone king. Do what is good in your sight.
So we see in these verses here, Jehu is sending a letter to basically all of the rulers in the land. He sends it to the people who are in authority in Samaria. He sends it to the rulers there in Jezreel. And he's sending it as well to, it says, those who reared Ahab's sons. So basically, the people who helped bring them up and train them. And so whatever that would have looked like, Jehu's sending letters to all of these people. And what is he asking them to do in these letters?
Grab their best.
All right, so you basically fight it out amongst yourselves, right? Grab whichever son from Ahab that you think is going to be the best suited to be king, and y'all figure it out between yourselves. I mean, that's more or less what Jehu's telling them to do. But these people being some of the ones who were in authority, the rulers, and some of those who had would have been probably the council of the king in the land, what do they recognize about this? Yeah, that's not a good idea. Because they just be setting someone up in order to fail. Because what did they realize about Jehu that had just taken place in Jezreel?
Killed 2 kings.
Yeah, he just killed 2 kings. Not even 2 kings could stand up against him. And so they realized, well, it's not going to do us any good to prop up one of the sons of Ahab, because he's just going to come and kill him, and not only kill whichever son we prop up, but he's going to kill us for putting him in that position, because that's what we thought was best. So in turn, what do they go ahead and say and send back to Jehu at that point?
They would do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, they say, we are your servants. We're not going to make anybody king, but we're going to do what's best, what is good in your sight. And so that's the first letter that's sent. That's the response that comes back. Now let's have somebody read verses 6 through 8. And we'll see this second letter.
Then he wrote a second letter to them, saying, If you are for me and will obey my voice, take the heads of the men, your master's sons, and come to me at Jezreel by this time tomorrow. Now the king's son, 70 persons, were with the great men of the city, who were rearing them. So it was, when the letter came to them, that they took the king's sons and slaughtered 70 persons, put their heads in baskets, and sent them to him at Jezreel. Then a messenger came and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons.
So if we thought that we got out of the gory stuff by the end of chapter 9, we're still right here in the middle of it, right? What's the second letter that Jehu sends to him say to do? Not just necessarily to kill them, but take their heads off, right? Behead each one of them. And how many were there? You had 70 sons. So he's asking them to behead the 70 sons of Ahab that were there, right there with them, and then send the heads back to Jezreel by that same time tomorrow. So within 24 hours, he's asking them to just go ahead and get rid of the rest of the sons of Ahab. And by that time tomorrow, a messenger had shown up in Jezreel with the message, verse 8, that they had brought the heads of the king's sons. And that's one of those where you think about what all this may have entailed, and it's hard if you visualize things, because it's not a pleasant picture or scene to visualize. But chances are we've probably seen some movies or pictures from history and things like that can give us an idea of what this maybe would have looked like. But the process of all of these things taking place, you have Jehu sending these letters to Samaria. Samaria, if I remember right, was something like 30 to 45 miles or so to Jezreel. And that I could be off on that because I didn't put that down in my notes again. But you at least have it on the map. You can kind of see you have Samaria down here and Jezreel a little bit further north. It's kind of where everything's taking place. And so you have these sons of Ahab. Some may have still been in Jezreel because of how it was, that he was also sending letters to the rulers of Jezreel. But chances are most probably would have been back in Samaria. So they behead all 70 of these sons, have the heads in these baskets. I don't know how many baskets that would have taken. I don't know how many donkeys or camels they would have had to loaded these things up with, and then bring them to Jezreel. And all the while, you're going to be going past people, and people are seeing this and wondering, what is going on? What is happening? And that's only going to be heightened once we get into the next part of this, and we see what it is that Jehu does and the message that he sends. Somebody go ahead and read now verses 9 and 10 of 2 Kings chapter 10.
So it was in the morning that he went out and stood and said to all the people, You are righteous indeed, and conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Know now that nothing shall fall to the earth of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spoke concerning the house of Ahab. For the Lord has done what he spoke by his servant Elijah.
I don't know exactly what time all of these things were taking place. And AG, I apologize. I think I cut you off earlier in verse 8. Because you look at the second part of verse 8, and that's where you kind of have another one of those scenes where it's hard to stomach. Because Jehu took all 70 of those heads and said, let's pile them up into 2 heaps. And so essentially what you have is you have the gate going into the city, and on one side of the gate, just say you got about 35 heads of Ahab's sons, and on the other side, there's the other 35. That's the picture we have. And it wasn't like they got there and then Jehu delivers this message, because when does it say he goes on to deliver the message? In the morning. And so at least overnight, maybe it came earlier in that afternoon. I don't know when all 70 heads were brought, but whatever the case, they sat outside the city gates there for a little while. The mounds of the heads were there. And everybody, I'm sure, is trying to figure out what is going on. And then the next morning, Jehu stands before the people, and Jehu has this message. Jehu addresses what was going to obviously be on people's minds by obviously talking about the heads that were there. He says, "You are righteous. Indeed, I conspired against my master and killed him, but who killed all these?" What do you think Jehu is doing in that? He's in part putting the blame on someone else, but in doing that, he's really trying to justify himself. Jehu is basically saying, okay, yes, I've done this. I killed the king, but no one's going to come after me, because who killed all of these? Right? It's all the other rulers and all of the chiefs in the cities and all the people who would have been the counsel to the king. And so Jehu is saying, this is what everybody wants. In essence, this is what you want. And so he goes on from there then to talk about how you can know, verse 10, "Now that nothing shall fall to the earth of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spoke concerning the house of Ahab. For the Lord has done what he spoke by his servant Elijah." It's a bit of a challenge, because you think about what it is that Jehu's saying in this, and I think that there's maybe two aspects to it. On one hand, what is it that he's specifically saying here? You can know what? So there's an aspect of their innocence, but I'm thinking more so about what he says in verse 10. You can know what about the word of the Lord?
Nothing shall fall.
All right, so you can know that God's word is going to come to pass. Nothing shall fall, right? Concerning the things of the house of Ahab, he's specific as the Lord spoke to Elijah. So on the surface level, I think you can see that. But then going back into chapter 9, what have we already seen about Jehu and about what it is that he's going to be doing? Is he fully concerned with the word of the Lord? No, because he's already shown that he's willing to go beyond even taking out Ahaziah. So Jehu in this, in some ways, and it's hard to judge what the motive in it is, but I think looking back through history, maybe we can see some leaders that were perhaps a little bit like Jehu, that they did good and right things, and there are times that even they would call on the name of the Lord and call on God and want people to see this element of righteousness, while then at the same time going ahead and doing things that are not authorized by God, that are not righteous. But you can do it then in the name of the Lord. And maybe I'm reading into that a little bit too much, but I think that under the surface you kind of see this going on. Jehu is setting himself up in a sense as a righteous and a holy leader, but was he truly a righteous and holy leader? No. And like I say, you go back through history and you can see people who prop themselves up as righteous and holy leaders that are far from righteous and holy leaders. And so there's something that we can see right here in 2 Kings 10 as it relates to that. And even when you get into the next verse, it really furthers this thought. Somebody go ahead now and read 2 Kings 10 and verse 11.
So Jehu killed all who remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men and his close acquaintances and his priests, until he left him none remaining.
So already in verse 10, who are we reminded that these things are supposed to be happening to? The house of Ahab. And that does happen. But even still in verse 11, we see that and more. Because who else does Jehu go ahead and have killed according to verse 11?
The priest.
Right, the great men, the close acquaintances, the priests, until he left none of them remaining. Still, some might argue and say, well, this is okay, this is good, this is what needed to happen. But is it what God said Jehu needed to do? It's a hard thing for us to get down to, but really whenever we get to it, Jehu's going beyond the house of Ahab in this. And that's going to continue now as we get into the next part, because he's going to continue even now an attack on Judah. But there's a lesson that we can see from some of this overstepping of Jehu. You think about going beyond what God has said to do. Is there any danger in that?
A lot of danger.
What comes from overstepping?
Disobedience.
Disobedience, sin. What are the consequences of those things? Death. Even for the kings, when you go back early on, whenever this kingship and this monarchy is being established in Israel, there are continual reminders to the kings that if you are faithful, if you follow me, all of these blessings will come and your children will reign continually after you. But if you decide to overstep, or if you don't go far enough, if you do not follow, if you do not obey, what happens to the kings? They're going to be cut off. That's the problem for Ahab. Ahab's family right now is facing the consequences because they were not willing to obey. They did not go far enough. But Jehu's going to find real consequences for himself, for his family, even further down the road because he was overstepping. Sometimes maybe we think in our minds, well, just to be obedient and, I've done what God said here, and so I think I can probably go ahead and do this over here. Does a little bit of obedience excuse a little bit of disobedience? No. And we're going to find that as we keep following this history of Jehu. Did I see your hand, Andy?
The thing about Saul, whenever he offered the sacrifice that he wasn't authorized to, I'm sure in his mind he thought that he was doing what God wanted him to offer that sacrifice, to offer that worship to God. But he's told, hey, this is not your job.
Yeah.
This is your responsibility. You have overstepped. You have gone beyond where you're supposed to be, and therefore you're going to be punished for it. Now, I think Jehu is a little bit different, that he is using the word of the Lord as an excuse to do what he probably had been wanting to do for a long time. I think Jehu's just kind of a crazy fella and more maniacal and wants to just go out there and do a lot of killing.
We can see it in his driving, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was Andy looking at you, Jim, not me. I just want to make that clear.
But I think he's just using that as an excuse because I don't want to steal any notes, but reading forward, he's not going to be a good man of God. He's
No.
starting verse 18, everything that what could have been considered maybe good by getting rid of some prophets of Baal, he could completely fucked up again. So.
Right. Yeah, and it's so interesting, especially once you get to that with the prophets of Baal and what he does, because it's like he gets rid of one because it's not a problem, because he's not interested in that, but don't start getting what he's interested in. And that's one of the lessons that we'll come to, especially once we get towards the end of this with Jehu. But let's move on into this next part where we'll see his continued attack on the line of David by his continued assault on these brothers of Ahaziah. Somebody read for us now 2 Kings 10, verses 12 through 14.
And he arose and departed, and went to Samaria. On the way at Beth-Eked of the shepherds, Jehu met with the brothers of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, Who are you? So they answered, We are the brothers of Ahaziah. We have come down to greet the sons of the king and the sons of the queen mother. And he said, Take them alive. So they took them alive and killed them at the well of Beth-Eked, 42 men, and he left none of them.
All right. I don't have a map for you on this one, but you can think back to the map I had earlier with Jezreel towards the top, Samaria a little further down. And just somewhere in between is where you have these events unfolding. Jehu is coming from Jezreel, working his way towards Samaria, while the brothers of Ahaziah are coming out of Samaria, working towards Jezreel. When they meet, Jehu is going to say, well, of course, well, who are you and what are you doing? And they let them know, or let Jehu know exactly who they are and exactly what they're doing. They didn't really know what they were doing because it's about to cost them their life. But nonetheless, they reveal that, okay, well, we're the brothers of Ahaziah. What do you think they're going to do when they find out that Jehu's the one who killed their brother? Because they don't know their brother's dead. Yeah, they would end up killing Jehu. Well, Jehu's obviously not going to let that happen, but it's not just that they were on their way to, or it's not just that they're Ahaziah's brother, but I think based on where they are and what's said, that then they're saying, well, we're on our way now to see the king. Not likely that they're talking about their brother, although it could be, but because of then the connection with also the queen mother, seems like what they're saying is we came here to see the king of Israel. We came to see King Joram, and we came to see his mother Jezebel, because they were both in Jezreel for all that they knew, and they didn't know Jehu's already killed them. Well, they just told Jehu the wrong things. Because what they told Jehu is they were sympathetic to the house of Ahab. Jehu knew what they were going to do as soon as they found out he's the one that killed their brother. He's the one that killed the king that they loved in Joram. And he's the one who killed the queen that they loved in Jezebel. Well, there's 3 strikes against them. So what's Jehu going to do? He's going to kill them. Every single one of the 42 of them that were there. He says, first, take them alive. So they took them alive. And then they took them and killed them at the well of Betheked, and he left none of them. And so we see what happens here to the brothers of Ahaziah. But remember, where are the brothers of Ahaziah from? Judah. Which is going to be the line of kings stemming back from who? From David, which eventually is going to lead to Jesus. Well, that's important because of the promise that was made to David in 2 Samuel 7, beginning in verse 12. Because the promise to David in 2 Samuel 7, beginning in verse 12, from God, is that he would always have a son after him reigning on his throne, and his throne would be established forever. But what's the challenge to that right now? The line of David is starting to die off and be killed off. So what's going to happen? Well, that's where we keep on reading. And we'll learn more about that, at least once we get into chapter 11. And so we'll see then, of course, how it is that, that this takes place with his killing of the brothers of Ahaziah. Then we'll get into verses 15 through 17. And as Ahab's continuing to clean up, if you will, now he's going to take care of the rest of Ahab's remaining family. Somebody read verses 15 through 17.
Now when he departed from there, he met Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him, and he greeted him and said to him, Is your heart right, as my heart is toward your heart? And Jehonadab answered, It is. Jehu said, If it is, give me your hand. So he gave him his hand, and he took him up into the chariot. Then he said, Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord. So they had him ride in his chariot. When he came to Samaria, he killed all who remained to Ahab in Samaria till he had destroyed them, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke to Elijah.
So, if you haven't figured it out yet, kind of looking at all of this with Jehu, it's a lot of up and down. That it's like one thing happens and it's like Jehu is so good and he's doing great things and this is exactly what God wanted him to do. And then you read the next section or the next verse and it brings you down. And then the next one brings you back up again. And it's just this constant up and down and up and down and up and down. Well, now we're back into an up. But there's still something within this that's going to bring us back to what he would say to the people and kind of calling on the Lord for what it is that he's doing. You look at what it is that we have, verse 15. And now Jehu runs into a friend. And so who is it that he runs into in verse 15? Jehonadab, the son of Rechab. We don't really know much about him. This is the first time that we're introduced to him. However, there's mention of Jonadab, at least, in Jeremiah chapter 35 in verse 6. Jeremiah chapter 35 and verse 6. And based on that, what we learn is that Jonadab, the people after him, were known for abstaining from alcohol. And so there was a sense of heightened spirituality within that. There is connection, you'd think, even to the Nazirite vow that they would stay away even from any product of the grape. And so there's kind of this idea in that. And even historically speaking, the kind of the primary background commentary that I use a lot of times and some of the other resources I was looking at, they said that this recognition for Jehonadab here being a son of Rechab connects him to a group of people who were known, culturally speaking, in that time for being followers of Yahweh. So he was one who was a follower of God to a great degree. That's what they were at least known for. So it's no wonder then that Jehu calls him up into his chariot after making sure, okay, are you good with me like I'm good with you? He calls him in his chariot, and what's he say we're going to go do? Come with me, and you're going to see my zeal for the Lord. First of all, if you have great zeal for the Lord, are you telling people to pay attention to my great zeal? No, so there's a red flag in and of itself. But he's doing this, gaining this support of one who would have been a good follower of Yahweh in the land at the time. And so they go with this zeal and go into Samaria, and what does he do? He finishes off all the rest of the remaining family of Ahab. And so in a sense, he's doing what he was supposed to do, but at the same time, we've seen that he's not doing exactly as he should have been doing. You think about then the question of his zeal. Was his zeal a right zeal?
Seemed to be for his own glory.
For his own glory. And that's going to come up again as we get further down through. Andy referenced earlier towards the end of this whenever he's going to take out the worshipers of Baal. But we see then at the end that there are still problems, that he didn't actually have a problem with the idolatry. It was just that wasn't his idol. He had his own idols. And so he's going to touch those, but not his own, because that would have been inconvenient for him. He's not going to do something that's going to affect his power and his impact. And so I think you're exactly right in that, Dina, that he's doing this not for the glory of God, but for the glory of self. But it's very scary when you look at how he does it, because he's already showing that he's not afraid to glorify God in order to glorify himself. Do those things ever happen today?
It reminds me of a false teacher trying to get people on his side.
Mm-hmm.
They profess, I'm doing this for God, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always shouting the Bible, but not actually truly being concerned with it. They just want the following for themselves. They just want the money. They want the fame. They want the popularity. And so we can see it in false teachers. We can see it as well, perhaps, in you think about Jehu, and he wasn't afraid to get violent. Have there ever been those in the name of God or in the name of Christ Jesus that weren't afraid to get violent?
Peter.
You see it in Peter early on, right? You think about the Crusades, maybe, right? There's an entire portion of history where in the name of God, we're going to go in and kill and eliminate all of these people. Was that a right thing? But they did it in the name of zeal and in the name of God. You could think back even to the Zealots. You have the Zealots earlier on, and you kind of see some Zealots in the days of Jesus that they weren't afraid for, they wanted God to rain fire down on the unbelievers, and they wanted all of these things, and they're going to gain these bands of rebels and go and attack these Roman outposts because they're doing it in the name of God. Well, even then, we can bring it down to, another level on that. Dina helps make it a little closer to home, thinking about the false teachers. Are there ever times that we ourselves maybe don't get violent in the sense that Jehu did, but maybe we decide that, if I say I'm doing these things for God, other people will see it. And if I can prop myself up as being a good and righteous man, then that's going to get me good standing at work or in the community. Does that ever happen at times? And before we know it, we've allowed some of these ideas to come in. And yes, maybe we are doing some good things, but then we find ourselves going a little bit beyond. Or we find that the motive in it and the heart is not right. It's something we have to be careful of. Because even though we may have right action does not excuse impure motive. It does not excuse what it is that we do. And so we must make sure that the heart is right, and then that the action that follows will be right. And it's one of the hard things in Jehu, because it's like the first time you're going through and looking at these things, you're sitting here trying to figure out, is Jehu good or is Jehu bad? Everything seems like it's going to be good. And even though there may be some of these places where we stop and we wonder, and maybe we could work things out and say, well, that's not exactly what he was said to do, but maybe we can find a way to work it in some of the fine print. But then we keep reading, and we just keep coming to more things where it just doesn't add up. And it's a frustrating thing to me to look at this and to read through it, because of how many opportunities and the chances that they had, and the way that this easily could have turned things around. But Jehu just wasn't willing to do it. But let's keep reading. And here's another one where we're going to see some good that takes place, but he wasn't willing to go to the full extent of it. Let's see here what he does with these worshipers of Baal. We'll start by having somebody read 2 Kings 10, verses 18 through 20.
Then Jehu assembled all the people and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu will serve him much. Now therefore call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his worshippers and all his priests. Let none be missing, for I have a great sacrifice to offer to Baal. Whoever is missing shall not live. But Jehu did it with cunning in order to destroy the worshippers of Baal. And Jehu ordered, Sanctify a solemn assembly for Baal. So they proclaimed it.
So we see then what it is that's going on here. Jehu calls for all the people to come. And before all the people, he kind of does what was a classic thing for the kings at that time, basically to say, your old king did this, but I'm going to do it better. That's what he's saying, that Ahab served Baal a little, but I'm going to serve him much. Now we know he doesn't actually mean this, because as we keep going and all the people come, all the prophets, all the servants, all the priests, let no one be missing for this great sacrifice, we find that Jehu was doing this in cunning, or he was acting deceptively with the intent of destroying the worshipers of Baal. And then we find verse 20 that he'd proclaimed this solemn assembly for Baal, and so they proclaimed it. But I have a question in this based on what it is that Jehu's doing. New King James again says he acted deceptively. So the question, is this deception okay? Have some yes, have some no.
I mean, if you're doing the right thing, you shouldn't have to be deceptive.
Exactly. He had every right within the law to just go ahead and kill them.
Yeah.
To go ahead and get rid of the temple. As king in the law, he had the right to do that. So why does he act deceptively to bring it about? It's one of those things that then you stop and you think about Jehu himself. Was Jehu actually concerned with doing right by the Lord? Maybe to some degree, but only to the degree that it benefited him. And so if he believed the best way to do that is to maybe step over the line just a little bit, well, then that'll be okay. But does a little bit of wrong excuse a little bit of right? It does not. So let's keep looking at these things. We'll see how far we can get into all of this. Let's keep going, and if y'all would read with me 2 Kings 10, verses 21 to 23. Then Jehu sent throughout all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left who did not come. So they came into the temple of Baal, and the temple of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said to the one in charge of the wardrobe, Bring out vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. So he brought out vestments for them. Then Jehu and Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal and said to the worshippers of Baal, Search and see that no servants of the Lord are here with you, but only the worshippers of Baal. So the picture we have now is that everybody has come into this temple of Baal. This is a temple that Ahab and Jezebel would have had built during their time. And so this particular temple now is full from one end to the other. The picture I have is that there's no shoulder room, and if you're trying to take notes in your pew, you're not going to be able to because it's that full, right? This is the picture that we have in our mind, that this place is packed. Everybody is there. And so Jehu calls on the one in charge of kind of the garments that they had, kind of the religious garments they had there in the temple of Baal. And he says, go find something special and let's make sure that everybody can, because this is going to be a great sacrifice. Well, in the meantime, Jehu and Jehonadab go then into the temple, and they want to make sure that there are no worshipers of God in that temple, only those who were going to serve Baal. Within that, I wonder, if you were a worshiper of God, why would you have been in the temple in the first place? Maybe this is just kind of a show for the people who are going to serve Baal to say, I want to make sure that this is only the people who are going to be true and loyal to Baal and to no one else. I don't really know. But if there happened to be anyone there that was a worshiper of God that was going to compromise a little bit and say, I can worship God in secret and in private and fool all of these people, well, we see the end that's going to come to them. Because what is the plan? Every single person in that temple is about to lose their life. So let's keep reading. And now let's look at this next portion as we get into verses 24 and 25. So they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had appointed for himself 80 men on the outside, and had said, if any of the men whom I have brought into your hands escapes, whoever lets him escape, it shall be his life for the life of the other. Now it happened, as soon as he had made an end of the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, go in and kill them. Let no one come out, and they killed them with the edge of the sword. Then the guards and the officers threw them out and went into the inner room of the temple. And so we have how it is that the sacrifice begins. Jehu gives the command. The guards and the captains, they go in. They're not going to let anybody out. They kill everybody that was there. But that's not the only destruction that took place. It wasn't just killing those who were the worshipers and followers of Baal, but then Jehu's going to take care of the temple. Verse 26, and they brought the sacred pillars out of the temple of Baal and burned them. Then they broke down the sacred pillar of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal and made it a refuse dump to this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal from Israel forever. If you're looking in a little bit of a different translation than the New King James or the King James, where it says that the end result of what happens to the temple, New King James will say a refuse dump. New American or English Standard actually say that he made it a latrine. Let's think about what's being said in this. And really, I think that's maybe a little more true from what I understand to the Hebrew. Refuse dump, we're just thinking about basically the county dump, right? Where all the trash comes and everything's piled up. A latrine deals more with what? Sewage. So really what we have is where the temple of Baal was, this holy place for Ahab and for Jezebel and all those who followed them, is now a place of complete and utter waste. A place where people would go to dump all their sewage. A place where people would go and throw all of their trash. That temple was not going to be rebuilt at all. Thus, Jehu destroyed Baal from Israel. Everything seems great. Everything seems like it's going to be good. But if you read ahead before our class next week, you're going to find that while we think everything looks great, Jehu was not all that he should have been. So we'll leave you with that, and Lord willing, next week we'll pick up in 2 Kings 10 and verse 29.